Good day to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our tropical weather outlook video for today, Tuesday, July 29th, 2025. On today's video discussion, we are going to talk about Hurricane Iona, which has now rapidly strengthened into a major hurricane in the Central Pacific today. Although it's probably not going to remain a major hurricane for much longer. In fact, it'll probably start weakening as we head into tomorrow. And of course, I've been saying this for the past several days, but despite all the activity we have right now, no major impacts to land. And obviously, I'll show you the models and the track forecasts in a little bit. But one thing you definitely won't have to worry about with any of this is there is impacts to land, especially if you're in Hawaii. So no need to worry about that. But we still have a powerful hurricane out there in the Pacific right now. Obviously, Hurricane Iona. The latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center as of 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Maximum sustained winds are at 125 miles per hour. Minimum central pressure at 957 millibars. Came real close to Category 4 intensity. In fact, maybe it still might do so. Who knows? Although it will not have that much time left because conditions will start to become more unfavorable over Iona in the coming hours. So maybe this might just fall short of Category 4 intensity, but still made it to major hurricane intensity nonetheless. And if you're tracking it, it is located at 10.8 north, 154.3 west, and it is moving west at 13 miles per hour. And here's a satellite image of major Hurricane Iona right now. Had quite a developed structure this morning, had a very nice, clear, defined eye, and also had a round, circular, and cooling CDO, central dense overcast, which is pretty much the circular structure of a hurricane that surrounds the eye. But as you can see in recent frames, maybe, and that's why I say that this might potentially fall short of Category 4 intensity, even though this is pretty much right on the doorknob of it. You notice in the recent frames, the eye kind of fills in a little bit, and the CDO kind of begins to degrade. There's a little bit of shear coming in from the southwest, and that shear will continue to ramp up over the next coming hours. So this might probably already beginning to weaken. And I guess this might not reach Category 4 intensity, although you never know. You can see that we still have some of these curling bands that are trying to solidify the eye wall. So this might still try to do it. Once again, it's very close to being a Category 4. And looking at the National Hurricane Center forecasts, this will probably remain a major hurricane for at least the next 12 to 24 hours. So this still might have some time to strengthen briefly. Just a little bit more and maybe become a Category 4 hurricane. But as we get into tomorrow afternoon and into tomorrow evening, this storm will start to weaken, probably become back down to a tropical system or tropical storm by the time we get to the weekend. And then it'll cross into the Western Pacific because the international date line, 180 degrees, is right here. So this storm is going to cross into the Western Pacific, and it will not even be in our area of concern in the Central Pacific. So definitely no threat or concern of any sort at all to Hawaii with Iona. So that is definitely the good news with this storm. And definitely with all the other activity we have in the Pacific, and I'll show you with a zoomed out shot of the Central Pacific right now. We have Hurricane Iona very much to the far south of Hawaii. And then just to the northeast of Iona, we have this other tropical storm here, Tropical Storm Kelly, which I'll actually briefly show you information on that. Maximum sustained winds are 40 miles per hour, so this is a very weak tropical storm. Minimum central pressure is 1,006 millibars, and it's located at 12.5 north, 148.0 west, and it is moving west as well at 13 miles per hour. So both of these storms are moving west. They'll definitely stay very far south of the Hawaiian Islands, and I'll actually show you the track of Kelly here. Just going to continue west for the next few days, and it'll probably die out by the end of the week. And then, by the way, just to really quickly show you, nothing of interest in the Atlantic right now. All of the activity continues to remain in the Pacific. We also have Invest 98E, and this might actually develop. Let me bring you back to the satellite imagery here. This is 98E, back to the east here, and definitely not as organized, especially as maybe a storm like Iona is, but in recent frames you can see that there is some convection blowing up. So maybe 98E might also try to develop and become another named storm here in the Pacific. And this will be the third named storm that has formed in just the past few days alone. Definitely a lot going on in the Pacific, and there's even more besides that. We have obviously 98E, which has a high chance of development. And then back to the east here, closer to the Mexican coastline in the eastern Pacific, although I will show you the models in a little bit, probably will not have to worry about any direct threat to Mexico either over the next several days. But we do have Invest 99E, in the Eastern Pacific, and this has a high chance of development both in the next 2 and 7 days. So this is also likely to become a tropical system, probably going to be another named storm for the Pacific here. And then we have yet another area of interest. So lots of activity to track here in the Pacific over the next several days. And just to show you how much stuff we are tracking, I'm also going to show you the 850 millibar vorticity map. I usually like to show this for the Atlantic, but they also have it for the Pacific too. And you can pretty much see where all of our areas are. We have Hurricane Iona, a very nice rounded and defined vorticity signature here. And this should be the benchmark for when you're looking at whether or not areas will develop. You should be looking for whether or not we have a vorticity signature that's nice and round and well developed, as obvious it is since Iona is a major hurricane, so obviously it has a developed, mature structure. And then we have Kelly to the northeast of that. There's these nice vorticity structure of 98E. Definitely has some nice vorticity with it, just a matter of whether or not it'll be able to organize a little bit further. And it seems like it's definitely trying, although obviously not as organized as, let's say, Iona is. And then we have as well lots of vorticity here, lots of energy in the Eastern Pacific. I believe this is probably the energy associated with Invest 99E. And this will try to consolidate and probably will be able to do so over the next several days, and that'll head off as well out into the Pacific. So lots of activity here occurring in the Pacific over the next several days, and it's especially unusual as to why all of this activity is occurring. And the main reason why I say that, let me bring you here to the sea surface temperature anomaly map by the NOAA Coral Reef Watch. This, by the way, updated as of yesterday. This map always updates a day behind, but it's only a day, so it doesn't really make that much of a difference. But anyways, in the Pacific, I guess you could say it is definitely warm. There's very warm sea surface temperature anomalies here in the Eastern Pacific. But notice here in the equatorial Pacific, a lot of these cooler anomalies, so pretty much meaning that we have a cool neutral in place. Definitely not an El Nino, and I say that because, as you know, El Nino tends to favor more activity in the Pacific rather than a La Nina or even a cool neutral like we have now. And in theory, this would also suggest that the Atlantic should be more favorable too. And obviously, the Atlantic isn't producing anything right now. But I'll show you in a little bit. I think that will change in the coming weeks. But it's just very unusual. This is definitely not the classic look you would expect, especially for an active Pacific basin. Cooler than normal equatorial Pacific, and also cooler than normal here in the subtropical Pacific, associated with the negative PDO. And that especially has much more of a bearing, too, on Central Pacific activity. Yet, despite all of this, we have two storms in the Central Pacific, one of them being a major hurricane, and we might even get a third storm here in the Central Pacific soon, and a bunch more of activity to occur here in the Eastern Pacific. So, lots of activity right now, and definitely very unusual. But I think things will start to even out, and I'll show you with the models in just a little bit. All of the activity that we have in the Pacific right now, and I touched upon this a little bit yesterday, but it's associated with the MJO, which is moving through the Pacific, which is allowing for more favorable conditions there, which is why we have all this activity springing up. And eventually, those favorable conditions over the next several weeks should move into the Atlantic. And obviously, again, I'll show you the models in a little bit, but I'll also touch upon this a little bit more tomorrow, especially, bearing that we get more model data tomorrow. But I'll show you those favorable conditions will eventually move into the Atlantic, especially as we head into the first week of August next month. And that should, in my opinion, we eventually the kind of activity we are seeing in the Pacific right now, all of the activity we see right now should eventually start to translate into the Atlantic. And really quickly, just looking at the sea surface temperature anomalies here, it is warm, 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 nothing but warm in the Atlantic. It's just a matter of time before something takes advantage of it, and it's just a matter of time before things really start ramping up here in the Atlantic. But really quickly, just to show you the models in the Pacific, here's the Central Pacific, and I'm just going to take it out over the next several days, and you see here Hurricane Iona continues on a westward track, stays well south of the Hawaiian Islands, and then eventually it makes it into the Western Pacific, where it eventually dies out as we head into the end of this week. Then obviously we have the small little piece of energy of Tropical Storm Kelly, and that completely falls apart within the next few days. So again, nothing of major threat and concern to the Hawaiian Islands. And then obviously we have the energy here, this piece of vorticity that's Invest 98E, and that tries to develop a little bit, but then also kind of dies out over the next several days, and once again does not bring any major impacts to Hawaii. And then we kind of just see all this activity go out to the next week. We kind of start to die down here in the Central Pacific. We start getting more stuff in the Eastern Pacific, as you could clearly see something that comes into frame here from the Eastern Pacific. And I'll actually show you the GFS now for the Eastern Pacific. We had lots of activity in the Central Pacific, but obviously as the MJO moves east, the favorable conditions will start to focus themselves more in the Eastern Pacific over the coming days. And sure, you'll definitely see how that plays out. We have this area here, I believe this is probably associated with 99E. And that obviously develops and will probably become a named storm over the next several days as we head into the end of the week. And then we have another storm behind that heading into the early part of next week. And then as we get into the week time frame, we have a third, and if you want to believe it, a fourth system on the GFS. So we have a lot of activity upcoming here in the Eastern Pacific. The Pacific Basin, once again, in the near-term future is where all of the activity will be. And then, obviously, meanwhile, conversely, in the Atlantic, obviously, I showed you the National Hurricane Center homepage. As you can see here, at least over the next week, nothing of significant development yet in the Atlantic, at least as we head into the first months of August. But to wrap it up, just to close out here, the last thing I want to show you, I think that'll change, especially beyond the week time frame. And I'm going to show you the European ensembles here. This is from the 0Z. And I typically show the European ensembles from weathernerds.org, but that map only goes out to 10 days, and the European ensembles here on Tropical Tidbits go all the way out to the next 15 days. And I am actually going to bring you out to the next 15 days. And don't take this too seriously, but just get the overall idea of what I'm trying to show you. And I'll show you here in the next 15 days, or at least over the next week, here on the model run. Obviously, you don't have much that really develops at all. Although, as we start to get beyond the 7 and even into the 10-day time frame, you can see a few ensemble members begin to show up here. Something tries to rekindle from tropical wave we have in the Atlantic right now, and maybe tries to get going further west. And there's definitely, if you pay attention to the operational models, like the Euro operational and the Euro AIFS, you know that they're definitely having a lot of fun with trying to show stuff occur in the Western Atlantic in general as we head into around the 2 week time frame in the Atlantic. And a little bit of that shows up here on the ensembles, but notice especially we're now at August 9th and August 10th, and this is the 10 to 15 day time frame here in the EPS ensembles. So we're now starting to get into the second week of August, and notice a lot of these ensembles are now beginning to light up. We have something here in the MDR tries to develop. You can't really take verbatim what they show, but the bottom line, and I said this earlier, a lot of the activity we have in the Pacific right now, obviously associated with the MJO moving through, that'll then make its way into the Atlantic as we head into the first week or two of August. And right on cue, you could already see in the long range the Euro ensembles beginning to reflect that. So bottom line, Pacific is active right now. Atlantic quiet for now, but in the long range future, especially as we head into next month, expect that to change. And especially as we're heading into August, and we know that that means peak time for the hurricane season, fast approaching. Expect that things will ramp up very quickly. But for now, obviously, things are nice and quiet, and at least in the near term future, at least in the Atlantic, things should remain that way. And once again, we have a lot of activity in the Pacific, but despite all that, at least in the near-term future there, all of it should stay out to sea, which is obviously a good thing. But that's going to wrap it up for today's video. Nothing much else to go over, so I'm going to end it off here. Thanks for watching today. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe. Peace, love, and kindness to you all. And as always, I'll be back with more tomorrow.